The office was buzzing with artificial energy, but behind the polished glass walls and forced smiles, something darker lingered. On her very first day, she felt it. She wasn't just any intern, though no one around her knew the truth. She was the daughter of Marcus Vance, one of the wealthiest black CEOs in America, but here she walked in as just another ordinary girl, a nameless face in a cheap blouse, carrying a second-hand laptop bag. She had traded luxury cars for the subway, penthouses for a cramped apartment, and respect for invisibility. And that invisibility was about to show her everything the world tried to hide. The moment she stepped through the revolving doors, she realized the empire her father built with sweat and brilliance had been poisoned from the inside. What she witnessed that morning would set her heart on fire, and change the lives of everyone in that building forever. The first blow hit her unexpectedly. A receptionist snapped at a janitor for daring to mop near the elevator, calling him useless in front of a crowd of employees. No one spoke up. They all looked away, as if humiliation was just part of the routine. The janitor lowered his head, silent, gripping the mop tighter, and her chest tightened in anger. A spark of rage burned inside her, but she had to stay quiet. She couldn't reveal who she really was. Not yet. She needed to see more, to feel more, to know how deep the rot went. Before we dive deeper into this journey, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories too. Minutes later, she was ushered into a conference room, where managers strutted around like kings. They mocked employees who didn't hit impossible sales targets, laughing while others sat trembling in silence. One young woman tried to defend herself, explaining her client hadn't been ready to sign yet. The manager slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "Excuses don't pay bills. Maybe you're just not cut out for this company." The girl's eyes welled up, but no one dared to comfort her. That silence was deafening. It wasn't just cruelty, it was culture. A culture of fear, of arrogance, of rot. As she sat there pretending to take notes, her blood boiled. Every fiber of her being wanted to scream, to reveal her name, to tell them that she could end their careers with a single phone call. But she didn't. Not yet. Because what she saw was only the surface, and she knew something worse was lurking underneath. These weren't just harsh bosses. There was corruption here, exploitation, and secrets buried deep in the walls of this empire. And to tear it all down, she would need more than anger. She would need proof. The rest of the day was a brutal parade of disrespect. She watched a manager pocket cash meant for company expenses, a supervisor berating a team in front of clients, and another twisting numbers on a report to cover his own failures. Each act left a wound on her soul, but each wound sharpened her resolve. They didn't see her. To them, she was nothing but an invisible intern. And that was their greatest mistake. Because in that invisibility, she gained power. She became the silent witness, the hidden storm, the eye watching from within. Every cruel word, every stolen dollar, every humiliated employee fueled her mission. She wasn't just here to learn the ropes. She was here to uncover the truth, to strike where it hurt the most, and to free her father's legacy from the hands of those who had twisted it into something ugly. As the sun set outside the towering skyscraper, she left the building with her heart pounding, fists clenched, and her mind racing. She had only been there one day, and already, the weight of what she discovered felt unbearable. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. And as she looked back at the glass tower glowing against the night sky, one thought echoed in her soul like thunder: they have no idea who I really am, and soon they will regret ever underestimating me. She had always known two worlds. One was built from privilege, gilded halls, crystal chandeliers, and dinner parties where billionaires clinked glasses and spoke in hushed tones about numbers with too many zeros to comprehend. The other was this: a cubicle farm bathed in fluorescent light, the smell of burnt coffee clinging to the air, and the weight of exhaustion hanging on every face she passed. As the elevator descended to the crowded break room, she couldn't help but reflect on the jarring contrast. Just the night before, she had dined in her father's penthouse, a space so vast that her footsteps echoed across marble floors. Tonight, she would return to a cramped apartment she rented under a false name, the kind of place with peeling paint and thin walls that let in the sound of neighbors arguing. She had chosen this exile willingly. Only by stripping away her last name, her privilege, her shield, could she step into the shadows where truth lived. When she sat at the cafeteria table, balancing a bland sandwich on a flimsy paper plate, she looked around at the weary faces of employees who could barely afford their rent. Many of them avoided eye contact, keeping their heads low as if afraid that even a glance could cost them their job. A woman in her 40s, with deep lines etched into her skin from stress and sleepless nights, whispered to her coworker about overdue bills. Across the room, another quietly texted her child, apologizing for missing another school recital. These were people her father's empire should have lifted up, yet here they were, crushed beneath it. And she, the heiress to millions, sat silently among them, sharing their suffering while hiding the truth of who she was. The more she watched, the more her heart ached. She remembered her childhood vividly, traveling by private jet, her father tucking her into bed with stories of building a company through integrity and determination. He had always said, "Our wealth means nothing if it doesn't make lives better." But somewhere along the line, others had seized the throne. The dream he built was now in the hands of wolves, and they were devouring everything he stood for. That realization cut deeper than any insult hurled her way. It meant her father's legacy was bleeding out right in front of her. Later that afternoon, as she passed through the executive floor, the division became even starker. Plush offices lined with expensive leather chairs and shelves stacked with awards contrasted against the sea of cheap cubicles below. She overheard managers boasting about lavish vacations while complaining that employees need to stop whining about salaries. Her stomach turned. The hypocrisy was suffocating. She had lived in the rare air of the wealthy all her life, but seeing it from this angle made her feel sick. It was a cruel theater. The higher the floors, the fatter the bonuses. The lower, the deeper the despair. And yet, despite the disgust, a seed of determination took root. She realized her infiltration wasn't just about gathering evidence, it was about understanding both worlds, so she could tear down the wall between them. The employees below needed a voice, someone unafraid to face the wolves upstairs. And if she played her part well, that voice could be hers. Still, the weight of her decision gnawed at her. Pretending to be ordinary meant giving up the comforts she had always known. No chauffeur waiting at the door, no bodyguard shadowing her steps, no one to lean on. She was alone in the trenches now. But maybe that was exactly what she needed. To lead with compassion, she first had to live in their skin, feel their pain, and carry their burdens. That night, lying awake in her narrow bed, she stared at the cracked ceiling and replayed the day in her mind. The cruelty of the managers. The hopelessness in the break room. The empty boasts of the executives. Every scene seared itself into her memory like a scar. She clenched her jaw, knowing she could never unsee what she had witnessed. And for the first time in her privileged life, she felt something unfamiliar yet powerful, a calling, heavy and undeniable. This wasn't just about exposing corruption anymore. It was about rewriting the story of her father's empire. And though her disguise kept her hidden, her purpose burned brighter with each passing day. She whispered into the darkness, a vow only the walls could hear, "I will not let them destroy what my father built. I'll bring every secret into the light." And with that promise, she closed her eyes, not realizing that tomorrow would test her in ways she could never imagine. The next morning, the mask of normalcy slipped further, and what she saw shook her to the core. The company's polished exterior, the glossy brochures boasting integrity and excellence, shattered before her eyes. This was not a workplace. It was a battlefield where dignity was the first casualty. She had barely sat at her desk when the storm began. A manager stormed into the open floor, his voice booming with arrogance. He singled out a young man who hadn't reached his sales quota, ripping into him in front of everyone. Pathetic. "Do you even deserve this job?" he barked, spittle flying as the boy stared at the ground, cheeks burning with shame. The office froze. No one dared to defend him. She clenched her fists beneath the desk, her heart aching with fury. It wasn't just unkindness. It was ritual humiliation, an act designed to break spirits and remind everyone who held power. As the day dragged on, the cruelty intensified. She overheard another manager mocking a woman for taking maternity leave, sneering that she was dead weight to the team. The woman's lips trembled, but she stayed silent, swallowing her pain like poison. Nearby, two executives laughed about cutting overtime pay, bragging about how much money they'd save while their workers scraped by on scraps. Every word felt like a knife twisting in her chest. This was no longer an empire her father built with pride. It was a playground for tyrants who feasted on fear. And she, hiding behind her disguise, had to witness it all without breaking character. But the cruelty wasn't confined to words. Later in the break room, she noticed one manager correcting a junior employee by snatching a folder from his hands and scattering the papers across the floor. The employee bent down, frantically gathering them while the manager smirked, sipping his coffee as though nothing had happened. The humiliation was deliberate. Her jaw tightened, and a voice inside her screamed to stand up, to shout her name, to tell them she could end their reign in a heartbeat. Yet she stayed silent, her rage simmering just beneath the surface. She couldn't burn the house down too soon. She needed every piece of evidence, every drop of truth, to ensure justice would be undeniable. Still, silence cut deeper than she expected. Each cruel act left her feeling bruised, almost complicit in her quiet. She began to understand why no one else fought back. Fear had rooted itself so deeply that even the strongest had surrendered. It was in their eyes, the resignation, the acceptance that this was simply the way things were. And that was the greatest injustice of all. These weren't lazy employees or fragile souls. They were good people who had been broken over time, worn down by endless abuse until their will to resist was gone. That realization lit a fire inside her. For the first time, she wasn't just angry. She was devastated. She saw her father's dream desecrated, his name being used as a shield for corruption. What would he think if he knew? Would he blame himself for trusting the wrong hands, or would he see what she now saw, that the empire he built was rotting from within? Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away. She couldn't afford weakness, not here, not now. By the end of the day, she sat alone at her desk, staring at the glowing city skyline outside. The injustice she had witnessed was unbearable, but it also carved something new inside her, resolve sharper than steel. If the managers thought fear could silence her, they were gravely mistaken. Because every insult, every stolen dollar, every broken soul only fueled the storm she carried within. And when that storm finally broke, it would sweep through this company like fire through dry grass. She closed her notebook, her disguise still intact, but her spirit unshakable. They thought she was invisible. They thought she was powerless. But invisibility gave her eyes everywhere, and power was building quietly in her silence. And as she prepared to leave, one thought burned so fiercely in her mind it nearly spilled from her lips. You think you're untouchable, but you have no idea who you've been humiliating. The day had left her exhausted in ways no luxury could ever prepare her for. She returned to her tiny apartment, the hum of the city outside mocking her as she sank onto the worn couch. Every face, every humiliation she had witnessed replayed in her mind like a relentless loop. The manager's laughter, the bending of rules for personal gain, the stolen bonuses, the trembling employees, all of it pressed against her chest. For the first time, she felt the weight of her mission as a tangible, almost unbearable burden. She had walked into this role with confidence, believing that courage alone could shield her. Now, doubt seeped in like a slow poison. Could one person, even the CEO's daughter, truly dismantle this network of corruption? As she rested her head in her hands, tears blurred her vision. She thought about the employees she had watched cower under the manager's cruelty. Their fear, their silence. It was a mirror of the doubt she now felt. Perhaps she had underestimated the system's power. Maybe her plan was foolish, naive. She had traded comfort for invisibility, wealth for vulnerability, and now, faced with the magnitude of what needed to be done, she wondered if she had made a grave mistake. The thought of failure was suffocating, gnawing at her resolve, whispering that she was alone, ill-prepared, and perhaps powerless. But then came a memory of her father, standing tall in the middle of a boardroom, eyes blazing with determination, telling her that true strength comes from facing challenges, not avoiding them. She had watched him build an empire from scratch, endure betrayal, and rise every time he was knocked down. If he had taught her anything, it was that adversity wasn't meant to stop her, it was meant to forge her. Her lips tightened as she breathed in, steadying herself against the rising tide of fear. She realized that doubt, while heavy, was also a signal. The closer she was to exposing the truth, the more powerful her actions could become. The next morning, she returned to the office with a new perspective. The fear and uncertainty hadn't vanished, but they had transformed into focus. She observed the employees not as someone separate from them, but as an ally, a witness, a potential liberator. The cries of frustration, the secret glances of despair, they all became pieces of a puzzle she now understood she had the power to solve. Each act of cruelty she had endured became a fuel for her determination. She was not just collecting evidence, she was gathering hope, meticulously, quietly, until the moment of reckoning. Still, the internal struggle was real. Every step she took on the office floor, every polite nod to a corrupt manager, was a test of her discipline. The voice of doubt tried to creep back, whispering that one mistake could expose her identity and destroy her mission. But she clung to the image of justice, to the vision of the company restored, employees smiling freely, dignity reinstated. That vision became her anchor, pulling her through the storm of uncertainty and fear. By mid-afternoon, she found herself in a quiet corner, scribbling notes, observing interactions, recording every subtle hint of wrongdoing. Each discovery renewed her resolve. Her disguise remained perfect, her movements unremarkable, yet her mind was sharper than ever. The invisibility that had once felt like a burden now became her weapon. She was learning, adapting, preparing. And with each revelation, her plan crystallized in ways she had never anticipated. As the sun dipped below the skyline, casting golden light across the city, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Doubt had visited her, tested her courage, and almost made her falter. But it had not broken her. On the contrary, it had sharpened her, strengthened her, and reminded her of why she had chosen this path. She was ready to move forward, to face the corruption head-on, and to turn her father's empire back into a place of integrity. And in that quiet, private moment, she made a vow that echoed louder than any fear: I will not fail. Not for myself, not for them, and certainly not for my father's legacy. The office had grown quieter in the late afternoon, the hum of fluorescent lights replacing the earlier chaos. She moved deliberately now, her eyes scanning every corner, every whisper, every careless act that could reveal the truth. The daughter of a billionaire had learned to walk invisibly, to sit unnoticed, to blend in with the ordinary. But beneath that disguise, she was a storm in motion, meticulously observing the corruption that ran like poison through her father's company. Each overheard conversation, each misplaced file, each suspicious transaction was a piece of the puzzle she was determined to solve. She had grown adept at reading gestures, decoding the hidden language of office politics, and documenting evidence that would later be impossible to deny. Her first real break came when she noticed a pattern in the manager's behavior. Certain documents were being shredded late at night, emails disappearing as if by magic. She discreetly photographed records, copied files onto a secure drive, and memorized faces connected to every illicit act. The adrenaline of discovery coursed through her veins, pushing her fears aside. She realized that invisibility was her greatest advantage. While the corrupt managers flaunted power, she collected proof in plain sight, unnoticed and unstoppable. Every interaction became a test, a casual smile, a polite nod, a harmless question that drew out secrets without revealing her own identity. Meanwhile, she began building mental maps of alliances and weaknesses. Who feared whom? Who took bribes? Who manipulated numbers or intimidated employees? Each revelation added another thread to her tapestry of justice. She watched employees whisper in corners, noticed hidden emails that exposed theft, and recorded conversations where managers arrogantly boasted about embezzlement. The pieces fell together with terrifying clarity. These were not isolated incidents. This was a network of deceit built on fear and greed. And the deeper she delved, the clearer it became. Taking them down would require precision, patience, and timing beyond what anyone could anticipate. Even as she gathered evidence, she had to maintain the appearance of the timid intern. A slight stumble, a misplaced glance, or a too curious question could blow her cover. She learned to laugh softly at jokes she didn't find funny, to nod at orders she silently opposed, and to record every detail with a calm hand. Every day was a battle of discipline, every conversation a potential trap, every gesture a test of her resilience. The weight of it was immense, yet with every detail uncovered, the fire inside her burned hotter. She began formulating her plan, a strategy as elegant as it was decisive. She couldn't simply confront them one by one. They were too entrenched, too confident, too certain of their untouchability. No, she would need to strike simultaneously, to expose each corrupt manager in a way that left no room for excuses or escape. The anticipation of that moment sent chills down her spine. She could almost feel the look of shock on their faces when the veil was finally lifted. As the days passed, her confidence grew. Each proof gathered, Each secret uncovered strengthened her resolve. She could imagine the moment when justice would unfold, the managers frozen in disbelief, employees breathing a collective sigh of relief, her father's name restored to the honor it deserved. The plan was no longer a distant hope, it was tangible, real, and within reach. Every late-night document scan, every careful observation, every whispered note brought her closer to the moment where invisibility would become power, fear would be replaced by accountability, and the truth would shine like a spotlight cutting through darkness. By the time the office lights dimmed and the city outside glowed like liquid gold, she allowed herself a rare smile. She was ready. Every obstacle had been mapped, every weakness noted, every ally understood. The storm she carried within was no longer raw anger, it was strategy, discipline, and unshakable determination. And when the day came to act, she would be unstoppable. Because invisibility had given her eyes everywhere, patience had sharpened her mind, and justice was no longer just an idea, it was inevitable. The day had arrived. The office buzzed with the usual pretense of normalcy, but beneath the surface, tension hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. She walked in confidently, her disguise flawless, carrying the weight of every observation, every secret, every piece of evidence she had gathered. Today, the silent storm would become visible. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with the electric anticipation of justice. The managers, arrogant and oblivious, flaunted their power as usual, unaware that the tide was about to turn, and they would be powerless against the very person they had underestimated. She requested an emergency meeting in the main boardroom, citing urgent concerns that required immediate attention. The room filled quickly, the corrupt managers exchanging smug smiles, convinced they would intimidate yet another naive intern. She waited until everyone was present, until the air was thick with arrogance, before she spoke. Her voice was calm, controlled, yet carried an undeniable authority. "There's something everyone needs to see," she said, sliding a folder across the table. Eyes narrowed. Murmurs erupted. Some managers leaned back, skeptical. Others tensed, a faint flicker of unease crossing their faces. One by one, she presented her evidence: emails, financial reports, recorded conversations, photographs, all carefully documented, all impossible to deny. The room grew silent, the usual laughter and mockery fading into a stunned, tense hush. As the magnitude of the evidence sank in, disbelief replaced arrogance. Whispers erupted. Managers glanced at each other, panic rising in their eyes. For the first time, they were exposed, stripped of the power they had wielded with such cruelty. The interns, the employees, even the support staff peered in through glass walls, sensing that something monumental was unfolding. Then she revealed her identity. "I am not just an intern," she said, lifting her head with unwavering confidence. "I am the daughter of Marcus Vance. And I know everything." Gasps echoed through the room. Faces paled. Some managers froze, their minds racing to comprehend the truth. They had underestimated her, thinking her youth and apparent naivety made her powerless. Now, in that moment, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. The woman they had dismissed, mocked, and humiliated was no longer invisible. She was the executor of justice, and the storm had arrived. One by one, she addressed each corrupt manager by name, detailing their misdeeds, and with a single decisive command, she terminated their positions. The sound of the gavel-like declarations echoed in the room. Shock gave way to horror on the faces of the managers. Relief and quiet jubilation rippled among the employees. Tears welled in eyes previously dulled by fear. The office, once suffocating with oppression, felt lighter, almost reborn. The act was swift, merciless, and perfectly executed, leaving no room for doubt, no chance for evasion. As the dust settled, she stepped back, her heart pounding with adrenaline, a mix of triumph and exhaustion washing over her. The employees began to murmur among themselves, their voices tentative at first, then growing in confidence, as if they had been holding their breath for years and could finally exhale. The room felt electric, alive, cleansed by the revelation, by the courage of one young woman who refused to bow to injustice. And in that quiet, victorious moment, she realized the power of visibility, of courage, and of truth. The empire her father had built was no longer threatened by those who sought to corrupt it. It had been reclaimed, not through wealth or status, but through unwavering integrity and fearless action. The managers would remember this day for the rest of their lives, but the employees would carry something even more valuable: hope. The aftermath of the storm was unlike anything the office had ever experienced. The air felt lighter, the usual tension replaced by whispers of relief and cautious excitement. Employees exchanged glances that held unspoken gratitude, a shared acknowledgement that the impossible had been achieved. For the first time in years, the company felt human again, flawed, but capable of fairness, dignity, and respect. She watched quietly from her desk, a small smile tugging at her lips, knowing that every tear, every fear, and every moment of injustice had led to this transformation. Her role in the company shifted almost immediately. No longer just an intern, she began to take on responsibilities that allowed her to shape the culture from the inside. But she did not wield her power with arrogance. Instead, she listened, observed, and encouraged. Employees who had once crouched in fear began to speak up, their voices confident and clear. Policies changed, and transparency became the new currency. Her presence was a quiet reassurance, a reminder that justice was possible and that one person could indeed make a difference. As weeks passed, she implemented systems that ensured accountability at every level. Managers were trained to lead with empathy, audits were conducted with integrity, and employees who had once felt invisible were celebrated for their contributions. The transformation was slow but profound, a careful rebuilding of trust and respect. She often reflected on the courage it took to remain hidden, the discipline it demanded, and the fear she had to suppress to see it through. Every challenge had tested her, but every victory, no matter how small, reinforced her belief in the power of perseverance. Beyond the office, the story began to ripple outward. Clients and partners noticed a shift in culture, responding with renewed loyalty and admiration. The company's reputation, once tarnished by rumors of corruption, began to shine again. Media outlets caught wind of the dramatic turn of events, framing the narrative as one of courage, justice, and integrity. She remained the silent architect behind it all, choosing to let the employees' achievements and the company's recovery take center stage. Humility had become her strength, and her influence spread quietly but powerfully. She often thought of her father during these moments. Marcus Vance had built this empire on principles that now seemed almost fragile in the face of human greed. Yet, watching her father's vision restored and thriving reminded her why she had undertaken this dangerous path. She had honored not only the empire but the values it was meant to represent. Wealth alone was meaningless. The legacy of fairness, dignity, and courage was what truly mattered. On quiet nights, she would linger in the office long after everyone had left, gazing out at the city lights. The skyscraper that had once symbolized oppression now glimmered with possibility. Each light represented a story, a life touched by the transformation she had helped enact. She felt a deep, almost indescribable satisfaction, knowing that her actions had sparked a change far greater than herself. And as she prepared to leave each evening, she whispered a vow that would guide her forever. Power is nothing without purpose. Wealth is meaningless without integrity. And courage can change the world. The company was no longer just a place of business. It had become a beacon of hope, a testament to what could be achieved when one person dared to see the truth, act with conviction, and fight for justice. The legacy was no longer just her father's. It was hers too, forged in courage, humility, and relentless determination. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, share this video and tell us in the comments, what part of this journey moved you the most? There's another story waiting for you, and it might just change the way you see the world. Thank you so much for watching and see you soon.